Hello, everyone, and welcome. Thank you for joining us today. To start off, I would like to introduce myself. My name is Madison Burnett, and I'm a BCBA. I lead our professional development program, and I'll be available to support throughout the webinar. In addition to that role, I work alongside other BCBAs on our clinician-led recruitment team, and I support in the effort of recruiting quality professionals to join our team. If you are interested in joining MPG, please indicate so in the post-webinar survey at the end of this webinar, or you can email careers@manhattanpsychologygroup.com. All right. And on the next slide, if you'd like to switch for me, June, I would like to tell you a little bit about Manhattan Psychology Group. We were established in 2011, and we've continued to grow our team consisting of skilled adult and child psychologists, neuropsychologists, behavior analysts, special educators, licensed social workers, and behavior interventionists. As a team, we're committed to wraparound care, which includes a wide range of services, from mental health and testing to ABA and educational services. This holistic approach allows us to address various needs and challenges with compassion and care. We provide services to clients out of our Upper West Side and Long Island City offices, in home, school, and clinic-based settings, as well as through telehealth. Our team is committed to serving individuals, couples, and families of all ages in diverse settings. We're also pleased to offer these free monthly webinars for parents and professionals where we will continue to learn and foster meaningful connections. Our vision at MPG is to create a future where individuals and their families feel supported, connected, and empowered. And our mission is to provide multidisciplinary, integrated support for individuals and their families who experience mental health, behavioral, and educational challenges. And now I would love to introduce our speaker today, June. June began her career as a special education teacher, supporting students with autism and other special needs in various classroom settings. She later transitioned to early intervention as an ABA therapist, developing and implementing ABA programs across home, school, and community environments. After pursuing her BCBA certification through Penn State, June now works as a BCBA consultant, continuing to support students and train school teams with a consistent focus on improving outcomes for children with autism and developmental disabilities. And now, without further ado, I will hand it over to June.
Thank you, Madison, for your introduction, and thank you everyone for joining me in this webinar, Applied Behavior Analysis in Action, Real-World ABA Techniques for Success. And today I'd like to speak about the different ways that we can generalize applied behavior analysis. For example, attendees will be able to understand the importance of generalization, and I'll be giving you some examples on how to generalize, how to integrate skills into real-world situations like we all encounter, and when to begin generalizing skills. So to introduce this topic, there are different types of generalization, and we'll talk about those in a little bit. But why generalization is important is the key focus of this webinar. Generalization promotes the applied behavior analysis. It allows an individual to apply needed skills across environments and people and places. It also allows behaviors to adapt to change in the environment and individuals to work towards independence. And that is a real outcome and a focus of applied behavior analysis. We're teaching skills to help people in real world situations so that they can apply those skills. They're not learning them for just to have a group of skills or skill sets. It's important that they know how to use these skills.
I don't think that the PowerPoint is switching with you. Okay, there we go. Now we see the slide that you were just talking about. Perfect.
So we have, going back in our history, we have the characteristics of applied behavior analysis and how they relate to generalization. Of course, we have applied, and a quote from the Cooper et al. Book, 2017. Improvement in behavior that is socially significant in a person's life, and that is the applied behavior analysis. And of course, we have behavioral.
So sorry to interrupt. Can you switch on to the next slide?
Okay.
There we go.
Oh, okay. It's like there are two slides on top.
Oh no.
So, okay. So the different characteristics I'm mentioning again are applied, behavioral, analytic, technological, conceptually systematic, effective, and of course, generality. And throughout the presentation, you will be seeing that I noted some of the characteristics of ABA in the PowerPoint. So, and first we'll talk about, I mentioned before that there are different types of generalization. There's response maintenance, and that is when a child will emit a behavior when the intervention is removed or it's no longer there. So that's what we strive for. And we have setting, situation, or stimulus generalization, and that is when a child or an individual will demonstrate a response under untrained conditions. So after they've learned a skill, they will go ahead and do it maybe in a different setting or a different situation. So it's not trained in that particular setting or situation. And we have response generalization, and that's when the child or individual emits behaviors that are untrained and are functionally equivalent to target response. So in other words, when a child learns a skill or a skill set, they start learning it in one place, and then they transfer it to a different situation or setting, and then they learn other similar skills, and they're using it in a functional way, um, in the original way that the particular behavior is equivalent to the particular behavior. Okay. So So I said I would have some examples, and here in this example is a young child who learned how to zip his jacket using a visual aid. So the visual aid is the intervention. And then after the visual aid is slowly faded out and it's no longer there, the child begins to zipper his jacket. And let's see, he learned that at home. Okay, it's an example. And then we have setting, situation, generalization. Prior was response maintenance. So after the child is zippering his coat to leave for school or going out, again, with no intervention, the child starts zippering his jacket at school or in another location, setting, situation, generalization. And then last but not least, what we look for is response generalization. So in that same example, the same child begins to zipper not only his jacket, but his backpack, his pencil case, and across different settings at home, in school, maybe in the community. When he encounters zippers across different environments and different situations, it's not always a jacket. And we have some more examples of the different types of generalization. In this example, after being taught how to take turns, so the behavior is taking turns during a board game with his ABA or her ABA therapist using prompts, the child takes turns in a game with a sibling at home without prompts. So he learns the board game. Initially, he is prompted to take turns, and then he starts taking turns with a sibling at home when the prompts are no longer there. That's response maintenance. And another generalization type, we have again, setting, situation, generalization. While playing different board games, examples Candyland, Chutes and Ladders, a child will independently take turns. So again, the behavior, the skill, the target skill is taking turns. So he took turns with prompts, then with his therapist, then he starts taking turns independently with a sibling, and then takes it to a different setting or situation, and he's playing board games independently, taking turns, which is a really important skill. And we have response generalization. The child will independently take turns while playing a variety of board games, right? There's Shoots and Ladders, there's the Game of Life, SpongeBob, and not only board games, but different kinds of games. Taking turns is the target skill. Hot Potato, that's a really different game. That's not like a board game at all. Then there's Twister, which I don't engage in anymore. I did when my kids were little. That's a game where you physically have to spin a dial and it kind of shows you where to put your arms and legs. It's a very physical game. So the point is that response generalization is when the learner is actually performing in this example, different games, taking turns with all different kinds of games. And that can look different across situations, settings, and people. So in talking about generalization, we know that a lot of our learners, in particular on the autism spectrum, um, do not always have skill sets. They have to be taught them. And often we start teaching foundation skills such as attending, good sitting, and really attending, focusing on the speaker and focusing on listening. And those are called foundation skills. And we often start with one-to-one with a therapist. Okay. And we want to talk about why this is important. Okay. Because real world and real life may start out one-to-one with a child on the autism spectrum to learn the skills, but it doesn't, it isn't, we need to move beyond that. And because the skills are taught for a purpose, we want the child to use them, not to just learn different skill sets. So why is this important? Well, we have lots of different reasons. We have health and safety. We have working with a group. Sooner or later, all children will go to school. Young children sometimes play with other kids and play groups and so forth, social skills groups. So we want them to generalize and being able to use those skills with others. Here, self-advocacy, asking for help. The young man is raising his hand. That's something that we need to learn for especially going to school, or really, so that everyone takes turns speaking. Uh, we want to generalize those skills. And some more reasons. We have a group of kids playing games, and maybe again needed for independent living. Uh, every child grows up and they have to be able to be independent, and that looks different for everyone. So having generalization is so important, and being able to integrate skills and use them, apply them in the real world environment um, can lead to all kinds of opportunities, right? They're needed skills. It can lead to socialization later on, employment opportunities, cooking skills for survival, basic needs, being able to, we all have to eat. And also that could lead to employment as well for some folks. And then we have just a bunch of really working it out together. That's what generalization is really being able to blend our skills and share them with across environments and people and situations. Okay, so some of the examples I have here on this slide. And again, often early learners with autism have core attending skills, and that is why we jumpstart those skills. And at first, we may teach the foundation skills in discrete trial and isolation, one skill at a time, with no distractors. In other words, let's say we're learning the color red. So initially, maybe we'll have one item that's red. And then eventually we add more other items that are also red. And then we go on and we add on distractors or other items. Well, we'll teach another color first, perhaps. And then again, add different items in that color. And then we want to have the child discriminate. So there's lots of ways we can generalize in this way, and that's what we're talking about right now, what I just described. Um, we want to randomize, right, after teaching in isolation, and then an example of teaching skills using a variety of materials, situation, environments to promote application of skills. For example, teaching counting in colors, use different materials to teach. You can use magnetic numbers. You can use flashcards. The little boy up in the corner there in that photo has clothespins with number cards on them. You can use bears of different colors. You can use blocks, beads, and so on. And all the while, what you're doing is you're really teaching generalization in that way because you're using a variety of materials. Um, Start to generalize counting with a simple game, such as playing an abbreviated board game. Uh, a very simple game. You don't want to start off with anything too difficult, which has numbers or colors. Candyland, everybody loves that one. That's just colors. You can sing a counting or a color song, a simple song. And again, moving toward more complex board games and card games. Uno is an easy number game, and it's got colors in there too. So let's give some more strategies. Visual aids. Visual aids are very, very important. The reason being is that you want to build a strong connection to the skills being taught. And oftentimes, some of our learners with autism are in the beginning non-vocal. And it's later on they may develop speech, but either way, you really want to make sure they're using strong visual connections to help them with communication skills. And in this slide, you can see an example of a schedule for getting dressed or getting ready for the morning. And you have a picture and a checkbox next to each. Get dressed, brush teeth, breakfast, clean table, put on shoes, get lunch, get backpack, have a great day. So, you have a picture for each set of skills there and words. That's one example. We have parts of a story with visual aids. For songs, you can use visual aids. For sequencing later on, those are more complex skills, sequencing. And then we have how to make a sandwich, a recipe for making a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. And again, you'll see a picture next to each of those, the steps to making a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. Okay, so again, you want to build strong connections for communication purposes and to help the child make that connection with visuals, with photographs, with pictures. Okay, and then what you want to do is teach common stimuli. Okay, and what we mean by that is initially for the learner to express their needs, right? We want to look at when we first teach skills, you want to look at basic needs. Everyone has to eat, everyone has to drink. So at first, um, you might want to start with food, try to keep it healthy. And we might start with one or two different kinds of food. And they also can serve as a reinforcer, but in teaching a child to man for a snack or man for a drink. And again, you may start with something, you know, alone, and then eventually you want to build on that. You want to use different snacks, add other snacks. And then for drinking or even eating, you want to vary the materials. We have different color cups. We have different color plates. Just keep it moving to adding a variety of different stimuli, and that's applied. That's one of the characteristics of applied. The child will learn these skills and apply them. Asking someone for a snack, that, they're expressing their needs, that they're hungry, or for a drink. Okay, on our next slide, we have some more examples of teaching common stimuli, again, to express needs and wants, to increase opportunity for contact, also for reinforcement across environments, that's behavioral. And again, we have manning for a snack, manning for a drink, and eventually starting to generalize some of these skills in a small way, and then building up towards more complex generalization skills. Reading a story to a child, they can listen to a story, um, play with magnetic letters and sing to a song, the ABC song. Um, Again, you're teaching letters, identification of letters, maybe in isolation, and then use those letters for the ABC song, or listening to an ABC story, ABC book. Um, Again, having the child use those skills is really key. Okay. On our next slide, um, again, some more examples of helping the child to express their wants and needs, to increase opportunities for reinforcement across environments. Um, Again, we start off with teaching in isolation, foundation skills, DTT. After a skill is mastered in isolation, very important, you want to also vary not only materials that you're using, and increasing those materials, items and objects and actions, but vary the SD. Um, and again, you want to vary what the child's response might be. And some more examples. For example, um, when you in the environment, we may start with in discrete trial, um, touch the ball, and eventually you want to say something other than touch, which is not used in teaching environments very often. I don't think I've ever heard it except in a ABA classroom where we had one-to-one skills. But in a general classroom or group instruction, you rarely hear a teacher say touch. They'll say, give me the red ball. Can you show me show me where the red ball is, or show me the red ball, give me the green car. Um, Different examples. So again, you're kind of mixing things up. You're mixing up the SDs. You start off in isolation, one skill, and then you build on that. You teach another skill, then you blend them. And again, in between, you want to start as soon as the child starts becoming more fluent and to criterion, then you would start varying the items and or the SD. Here we have some examples. Teach multiple targets, items, and attributes. Those programs, you can blend those together for the same skill and assess for generalization to new targets. So imitation skills, do this. You can model slow car, model fast car. Um, push the small green car. Again, you're building on generalization. It's not just always push the red car, push the red car. Um, it changes. Roll the red ball, roll the small green ball, again, adding different attributes. Um, Touch the red car, give me the red car. Here you have the example F1, right, field of one. Where is the green car? Okay, again, this is not done all at once, as we know, but you want to start building up the different items and objects, and think about ahead what when you teach, it's based on the learner, and also think ahead always, how can the learner use this skill? You want them to be able to have skill sets and to be able to apply the skills, use them. Again, the applied behavior analysis. Show me the big car, give me the small car, give me the red ball. Where is the small ball? Show me the large ball. So you continue teaching identification skills until the child identifies untaught responses. Okay. And always think about reinforcement. right? In the beginning, we may use food and drink, but and try to keep it healthy. Then we want to move towards other reinforcing items, and we may have to teach that fun items that are common for the learner that they may see in the environment. And you want to gradually move to more natural reinforcement that the learner receives from accomplishing a task. Let's see. So here we have contrived reinforcers, right? Teddy bear, favorite teddy bear. We have some food. Um, we don't always want in our natural world, we don't always have food when we do something appropriate, right? So we're going to have to contrive things in the beginning, especially with a young learner on the autism spectrum. And then you want to move on to more natural reinforcers. The One of the pictures shows a child is so happy that she got something right, or maybe she played a game and won. The child sliding down on the slide, that's just comes about as their own natural reinforcement. Winning a game or playing a game could be exciting. Again, the child will contact these reinforcers in the environment. Um, that's what you really want to teach, to help generalize the way that we learn skills, to use skills, and also to receive reinforcement, right? We can't be reinforced for everything in the real world as we move along, but it's important to reinforce a lot in the beginning with our young learners. Mhm. So here's where we can talk about beginning to generalize. Again, you start with teaching a skill in isolation. Then you want to start varying the SD. Then you want to add another item or action, blend it together, right? And I'm saying this very quickly, but again, this takes a lot of time, as we all know. You want to use multiple examples of different types of, for example, balls. Why are we teaching identification of balls in different colors and different types? Not just so that they have a list of kids or people have a list of different items they can identify or name. We want to teach them that these items have functions, and these functions can bring about reinforcement, and they can just have fun. For example, let's see, learning how to play a ball game. And here, and again, just some points. Make sure once a few skills that are required in a one-to-one setting, that a variety of more exemplars are added, right? You don't want to just stick to one. When fluency occurs in a one-to-one setting with sufficient exemplars, you can begin to generalize. And we talked about that, right? Vary the SD, vary the items. Um, Keep a behavioral momentum towards teaching skill sets and introducing them into general applied or real world functional ways, just playing a ball game or um, playing catch, throwing. We may teach those actions, and then we want the child to use them to generalize the skills. So when we do this, that brings us to our next slide. You want to think about RFFC, right? Feature function in class, right? Receptive feature function in class. And the reason we want to think about this, I thought I'd try to do a little diagram here. Let's see. So again, going back to that cycle of teaching things in isolation, giving the child foundation skills, we may start with discrete trial, then you vary the SD, then you vary the stimuli, different types of toy cars or different types of actions that you're teaching, or and attributes, ways to, descriptors of items. Then teaching imitation of an object, push car. We're not teaching push car, roll ball just to be able to do that. We want the child to be able to use that in the real world. Play, they can, for that, pushing car, for an imitative action like that, they can learn how to play a simple ready, set, go. First with the therapist, right? Using different cars, maybe some different trucks. And then, maybe add another person besides the therapist that's teaching the child this. Then you will, maybe you can add a peer model, start with a peer model. It's very effective. Um, and then maybe add another, a sibling or another child so that the child can play a game with another child. Okay. And let's see. So building behavioral momentum is another thing that I like to think about when it comes to generalization. BST, I think it's really, really helpful to think of generalization using behavioral skills training. Once a few skills are acquired in a one-to-one setting, you have your instruction, your introduction, right? Then you model the skill. Okay. You give the child opportunities to practice the skill. And you may role play certain actions, such as pushing a car or maybe model a way of asking for help, right? And a more advanced skill, of course. And then you have reinforcement for appropriate correct responses. And if there's error correction, you need clear, concise, and quickly make corrections. And then again, you may have to go back and instruct or do any going back to the one of these skills, modeling perhaps. It depends where your learner is. And then again, reinforce correct responses. So if you think of behavioral skills training, it really relates to, what you're doing when you try to generalize. Okay. And our next slide. Strategies to help generalize skills across environments. After teaching identification of objects and imitation action programs, I'm just trying to demonstrate how we can take, again, initially with a young learner, you start off maybe after foundation skills are in, maybe, two different items, and then as you vary the SD and you're varying the items as stimuli, you want to look to some, you want to add imitation programs and then start thinking ahead of how can my learner utilize these skills? How can they apply them in the environment? And using objects and imitation, you can blend those two together after each of the skills are mastered, or if the child is fluent to a particular criterion, right? 90% across 2 or 3 sessions. Incorporate taught actions. Again, they're taught with a variety of different objects to engage a child in play. They can play with the therapist and then play with another, maybe a sibling or another child. Play a racing car game, ready, set, go. And there are other types of games like that that are very simple. And they really allow themselves to modeling, which is also another effective strategy, part of BST. Play with a train set, play feed the baby with a doll, um, put the baby to bed using a doll. So there's lots of different ways that you can take these skill sets, and after the learner is acquiring the skill sets, blend them together to help generalize. And our next slide, strategies to help generalize skills across environments and with people. Okay, so first we have add different actions that pair with items. Okay, thinking ahead. You have acquisitions from one, then two-step actions. Maybe pick up the ball, roll the ball. You can start off with one action, then build it to a two-step. So again, all along, you're generalizing in different ways and you're building on that behavioral momentum. Move from a one-to-one to another area. That's what it may just take in the beginning. You want to start slow, gradually, and build up. You don't want to just change everything all at once, right? One step at a time. And you can move from the child sitting in a chair and then sitting on the floor, maybe on a beanbag. Really depends how the child is progressing in their program. You can add another child that can serve as a model. We talked about that before. And then add another child, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, so these are ways to generalize, and you can see some of the photos kind of represent that. So our next slide, strategies to help generalize skills across an environment. And on this slide, basically, I wanted to talk about it's Alan, one of my students, and Alan has autism, and he has some skills, but like for example, he knew that where to get water at school and at home. He knew that at school the kids would go out in the hall to get a drink from the water fountain or fill the water bottle. So he knew what it was for. He was able to drink water from a bottle. However, he didn't ask for help, or he didn't ask for help with, in particular, to go get a drink like the other kids in the class. He would just kind of sit there. Sometimes the kids drank out of a prepared water bottle, and rather than when other people were asking to go out to the water fountain and fill their own water bottle, the kids did two things. They had a water bottle in their backpack that they would use at different times to take a break, or they would go out and fill their water bottle. So, but Alan would not ask for help. So he would do things like he'd pick up his water bottle closed, and he couldn't open it. And instead of asking for help, he would just turn it upside down, try to drink from it with the cap on. And at other times when the kids would be given opportunities to go out and fill their water bottle, he would not do that. And instead, he would sit with an empty bottle and just turn it upside down. So his teachers wanted him to learn that. And in my observations, I recommended that. And we started with this activity. Later on, we built his self-help skills, but he's doing very well. But so what we did was I had to do some assessments, and he had a one-to-one aide. So first, again, we wanted him to ask for help with his water bottle, either filling it or opening a pre-manufactured bottle of water. And so we worked on asking for help in role plays. All right. And to try to get him to use some video models as well to ask for help opening the manufactured water bottle. But also, I recommended assessing if he could fill his water bottle. Like, did he know all the stats? He knew what the water fountain was for. So we took him out there, and this particular water fountain, water dispenser, it's a dual one. And if you press the foot pedal, the water for drinking, leaning your head in and drinking a water straight from the fountain would come out. And then if you wanted to fill your water bottle, you had to take your empty water bottle and put it underneath, and the water would just start automatically coming out. So when we first took him out there, I said, okay, you're going to fill your water bottle. And he took his empty bottle and he put it under, and at the same time he depressed the water fountain, and the water started coming in the bottle, but he didn't need to depress the water fountain because he wasn't taking a drink from the fountain. So that step, again, that was assessed. And we just wanted to see, we were going to let him go so far, but we didn't want to have water all over the floor, and then the bell would ring, and we didn't want to have any accidents. It was a safety issue. So he filled the water bottle, and we wanted to see if he would stop, and he didn't, and it overflowed a little bit. But no worries, it drained out. We just needed to see where, if he was aware and knew when to stop. So I did a task analysis, and he knew, again, he knew how to what the water fountain was for, the water dispenser, I'm sorry. And but he didn't stop. And he did that extra step that he didn't need to do with filling his water bottle. So after the task analysis was developed for him, we just taught him step by step, and then we changed, the steps. And he was over time, he learned very quickly, as he did with the role plays on asking for help, how to fill his water bottle. So we started asking also for some help from home, to have mom send in an empty water can bottle so that it would hopefully prompt him. And again, we were doing the role plays. So he started doing that. Can I fill my water bottle? And over time, he was able to complete all the steps to fill his bottle at the water fountain. But we didn't want to stop there because the water fountain, water dispenser, I'm sorry, is not the only way you can fill an empty water bottle. We asked mom and dad how he was able to get water at home, and they explained that they were basically doing it for him. So we talked about, what we were doing at school, and it would be good for Alan to be able to be independent with the skill, and he was capable of doing it. In asking the family, they had a water dispenser out of the refrigerator, but that worked a little differently when you had to take the bottle and push it, and then otherwise the water would stop. So we gave mom some strategies, and his home therapist worked on that. We coordinated with the home therapist. And after a time, Alan was able to fill his water bottle at school, at home in different using different water dispensers, again, generalization, after we taught him the steps to fill his water bottle, and he caught him very quickly. We also taught him how in fax class how to fill his water bottle just with a kitchen sink, because he may not everybody has a refrigerator with a water dispenser. And again, looking at generalization and independence, and a really important outcome of applied behavior analysis, and for good reason for our learners. Um, this was Alan's story, and he took it away, and he did really well. Now, he fills his bottle all the time. He asks for help. He tells us sometimes, I'd like to fill my water bottle now, at different times, independent actually of even when the kids are getting breaks, which is really nice. That's a good example of response generalization, different environments. He's in different classes, and he's using different water fountains, and at home in the community. Mom has reported, and dad. Okay. Um, we use behavioral skills training, a lot of practice opportunities. And again, the role play to teach how to ask for help. To be able to go and fill his bottle. Okay, so let's see. So we have on this slide strategies to help generalize across environments. You want to pair novel toys and situations. You want to ask questions with previously taught items and functions. Um, you can use visual aids initially, and visual aids are the easiest, really prompts to fade. And an example, I see you're playing with a yellow car on the road, right? Maybe you see a child playing with a yellow car, and you can say that to them to try to initiate, a generalization. And you could say to the child, can you show me where the train rides, right? Lots of our kids sometimes get stuck on just playing with one item. So that's another strategy. Again, once the learner has acquired some skills, um, you want to think about materials, right? Varying the materials, like in examples in games. You can use missing items, maybe take out the board game. Again, this is after a child has acquired some skills on playing games. Leave the piece out and see if they'll ask for, a game piece, or leave the game board out, so announce you're going to play a game, and just wait and see what happens, right? If they ask for the game board. I love Mr. Potato Head. I think it's a great toy to teach a lot of different things, body parts. And then, you can leave those missing pieces out. and then have them, I'm sorry, have them, if you leave missing pieces out, have them it, ask for the piece. They can communicate either vocally. If the child is non-vocal, they can use their uh, uh, vocal adaptive device or app. Proliquo, I know, is one. Okay, and here we have again some other strategies. Whoops. Okay. So one of the important things also is assess for generalization, like we did with little Alan. After teaching a behavior, be sure to assess for generalization. We modified the skill, we broke it down, we did a task analysis, right? We assessed it into simpler steps. And if that doesn't work, if the child is not generalizing one or part of the skills, right, you want to do a task analysis, analytic and technological characteristics, right? Come up with for ABA here. You can assess each modified skill for generalization. So once you break it down, you can assess for those skills. You make sure that the child is really fluent in the skill before you add the next step. You build up the chain. Again, that's what we did with Alan. Um, the acquired modified skills together and assess for generalization, that they can put them together and use it. All right. And there we have an example here. Okay, you want to teach a full range of relevant stimulus conditions and response requirements. Another quote from Cooper et al. 2020. In other words, you want to train loosely, right? Because it's not all about the same thing. Um, Introduce different types of water fountains in the water fountain example. Automatic water fountains, non-automatic ones you have to depress, right? Um, Water dispensers on refrigerators, filling up a water bottle in the sink, vary the setting, school, store, park, maybe an office at home, etc. You want to set the stage for indistinguishable contingencies. The child should not be able to guess when they're going to get reinforcement, right? Eventually, we may reinforce a young child very continuously, and then you want to switch over, transition to delayed reinforcement, right? And you do that in steps, of course, not all at once. Begin to provide delayed reinforcement once a skill is mastered. Cooper et al. 2007. You want to move and transition towards intermittent schedules the way they are in the real world. We're not reinforced in the real world for everything that we do. We get lots of reinforcement, but not for everything. Think of a school setting, right? You're going to get different schedules, varying schedules of reinforcement. And the reason we do that is because we don't want the child to predict when they're going to get reinforcement. And also increase resistance to extinction. So if a child keeps learning and on a continuous schedule of reinforcement, after a while, right, satiation is going to set in. You're just going to get you will not get good progress with that. We want to, and again, it doesn't allow for generalization. You want them to generalize different preferences, and teach, and always assess for reinforcers, right? You want to generalize that too, in a sense. In other words, keep them guessing, right? You can also use non-contingent reinforcement and CR in the generalization setting to maintain appropriate responding. So that is, you're going to reinforce whether or not the target behavior that you're looking for occurs. Sometimes, you will, and sometimes you won't. Think of a classroom setting, right? Most kids end up in a school or a group setting of some sort. Could be small group or large group. So they're going to, you know, have reinforcement at different times, not always. And so it's important to keep that in mind. That's part of generalization too, learning that learning that reinforcement does not always come all the time, but it takes time. Okay, you want to also teach examples and non-examples. see. So here, we have different types of art. We have a little girl painting on an easel. We have some watercolors, maybe some gel paint, some um, uh, tempera paint. We have crayons, right? So if you're coloring on an easel or if you're coloring on a coloring page, you want to use appropriate art mediums, right? You would use crayons, maybe some watercolors, lots of different art materials. However, you would not use house paint to paint on an easel, right? One, because it's toxic, right? The fumes are toxic, and or it's not appropriate. It's really for house, not for painting on coloring pages or on an easel. And we have another non-example, Sharpies. Sharpies, they have magic markers that are non-toxic. Sharpies are toxic. The fumes from them are very strong, and that would not be appropriate to color with Sharpies. They also bleed right through onto through paper and um, fabric and also onto surfaces. So again, you want to teach examples of what you should use in terms of items and materials when you're teaching different materials, but it's just as important to teach non-examples of materials as it is to teach examples. All right. And next, let's see. You want to teach enough examples, enough responses. You want the child to have a variety of ways that they can access and respond with. Teach non-examples as well, places that are not appropriate to get drinking water. Well, we probably have many of us have done this drinking from a hose, but it's really not the best way to drink water. You definitely don't want to drink ocean water. It's salty. You don't want to drink water in a pool. And children or people will encounter these different things. Our learners, even older learners with disabilities, sometimes, again, they're going to encounter this. You want to teach those non-examples too. It's very important. That's part of generalization. Um, so, and we have on our next slide. So I want to thank everyone for joining me in this webinar. I hope you enjoyed it. And if there are any questions that you have, um,
Yeah.
please feel free to reach
Yeah,
out.
so if anybody does have any questions after the presentation, just feel free to reach out. You can email professionaldevelopment@manhattanpsychologygroup.com, and we will send your question on over to June so that she can provide a response for whatever questions you might have. But thank you so much for presenting today, June. I know there's a lot of information, and I hope that it got everybody a really good start to learn how to generalize their skills with their learners a little bit more. Thank you, everyone, for joining us, and I hope you have a great day.
You're welcome, and thank you, everyone.